Welcome back to Tabletop Tactics for Rocket League, where I'm going to be showing you how to position better using my tabletop and some Hot Wheels, and we will get you up the ranks in no time, hopefully. So last episode we spoke about the 1-2-3 positioning system, which is incredibly complicated, and I can understand if a lot of you didn't fully make sense of it. But with the next few episodes, hopefully it will give you a little bit more detail as to why that is effective. So today we're going to be talking about crossing the midline of the pitch. So let's just set that out here. So we have our midline now, and the reason why I am specifically talking about an imaginary midline is because it's important to make sure your team doesn't cut in front of each other. Now, why would you define the midline as a particular place? It's not specifically in the middle of the pitch. The midline can in fact move. So the midline might be slightly towards where your teammates are. Say the ball is on this side. This might be the midline. But the whole reason why I've described this is because players who are on the other side of the midline to where the ball is are unlikely to want to get involved in the play, because it means that they're breaking rotation, especially in threes, because as we described, you've probably got a player back covering in threes. So say, we have a situation, your teammate is on this side of the midline, and this player here is they were in a passing position, but they've started to creep across because they've realised that the ball is probably going to get challenged. Now this ball gets challenged, this player is out of the play, and then we have a blue team player moving downfield with the ball. Now this player here goes, oh, I'm the closest player to this ball, so I'm going to challenge it. And by doing so, they come across, and then this means that they make a half-hearted challenge on this ball. And because the blue player is in a lot more control, they'll either beat this player, they can do all sorts of dribble tactics, they can do all sorts of hits, or they'll have a favourable challenge, which will be more like a 70-30, so this person will win out, and the ball will still progress forward. Problem is now, this player has cut across and is now on this side of the pitch as well. And so you've got two players, both on the same side of the pitch, also on the same side of the pitch as their opposition, also on the same side of the pitch as their teammate, and you've got a very narrow team. And the reason why this is bad is there's only so much boost on this side. So say this player took this boost, say this player took this boost. If either of those have been taken, then they're going to be boost starved. And then also they're going to rotate back on the same side as the ball. And if you remember in the first episode, back post rotation is very important, but it's very hard to get in a strong position quickly if you're both on this side of the pitch. So it's more of a long-term thing why you shouldn't cross the midline. So what should the player do instead if they're on the other side of the midline? Is they should accept that their player who is furthest back will be the one who pushes forward, because they've got the vision and they've probably got a lot of boost and a lot of control over the situation, so they'll be the one who pushes up. And while that's happening, this player can start going back and filtering in behind. Okay? That's a very one situation based example, but in general, the reason why you don't want to cross the midline is you get very unfavourable situations normally, because you come in side on to a challenge which a teammate could be coming on front on. And the other thing is you then have very overcommitted to one side of the pitch, which means you're very vulnerable on the other side of the pitch and in the goal area when you've rotated back. So we're going to look at examples straight away, because I think that's pretty much everything you need to know, and we'll talk a little bit after the example has been shown. Okay, I'm going to start off by saying I've watched about 10 minutes of replays and barely found an example of this, because top players very rarely do this. It required me to go to a very high scoring game where I'm assuming a lot of mistakes were made, and unfortunately I have to go to my boy Dan Sizzle, who I've actually spoken to about this since this event, and he's definitely improved on it. But this is more a mistake you'll see in ranked with players who are trying to carry and trying to do too much. So, we're on board with Dan right now. I'll show it from an aerial view as well to help you understand. But right there, he cut across the midline, and that put his whole team in a horrible situation. So, let's just go back a little bit, and we'll go into AutoCAD. So, okay, Niels takes it down that right side, And while this is all happening, you can see Zenzis is in the position 3, Niels is in position 1, Dan's in position 2. Now Dan holds his position on the right side there, so we're imagining from their point of view, he's on the right side. And when he notices Niels not working, he should have pushed back down the midline of the field towards the net, where Zenzis can then push up to try and challenge, which you see Zenzis is already making his way upfield. Dan has cut across, collects that boost, which is great, boost starves a lot, but he's cut across into the same side as teammate Niels, who's on the ceiling somehow. And they're both now on the same side, and Zenzis has pushed up thinking he could get there, and now, because Niels was on his way back on that same side as Dan had pushed across, he wasn't able to make a save. So, here, this is the point where Dan is technically crossed the midline. Remember we said the midline can be slightly offset from the middle of the pitch. And at this point here, he turns in. Had he turned back, or kind of held his position, waiting for Niels to potentially push forward, then Zenzis could push up, challenged where a lot touched that into the middle, and they would have been completely fine, and they would have been in a lot stronger position. But instead, Zenzis felt guilty pushing up because he was the third player and needed to cover back, and that's why it's so important to rotate out, not going across the midline. So again, apologies to Calnose for bringing attention to their mistakes, but that is one of the reasons why people concede a lot of goals, is they limit themselves by pushing across that midline and getting very condensed on one side of the pitch. Okay, so let's talk about another scenario. So you're playing ranked with a random person on your team. So there's just 2v2, shall we say. So red player is your teammate, and you are orange player. Your opposition have got a nice back post rotation because they watched my first video. They've got a player at the back post, someone pushing out on the ball, and this guy challenges and wins the ball, and your teammate is now stuck in the opposition half. So because you're playing 2v2s, there is no position 2 and 3, you are both. Okay, so you were sitting ready for a pass, your teammate didn't do what you expected him to do, so you then have to rotate back. Now, what a lot of players will do in ranked 2v2s is they'll push across and try and challenge. Now the problem here is your teammate is not going to get back in time, and if anything goes wrong with your challenge, the opposition are then through because this player's gone, oh great, my teammate's going to push all the way up so I can start getting into position 2 ready. So any kind of challenge and that ball pops out into the middle, you're going to be in a very back foot position. So instead what you should do is a thing that I call stalling, and this is a prime example of it. The midline crossing is a prime example of stalling. So you see he's pushing up that side, so you then come back here and you kind of tease that you're covering the net. And that forces this player to try and do something different because they can't go straight to the net because you're covering that. So what they then try and do is they'll probably take it up the wall here, and then they'll probably try and pass it in the middle to their teammate, and by that point you've wasted enough time that your teammate is then almost on his way back. So the next touch you make, your teammate is then in position ready to cover. So that's what stalling is, where if you had aggressed, had pushed in straight away on that ball, then you would have taken away the opportunity for your teammate to get back in time. And because of crossing that midline, you force that to happen, where if you hold your position on the other side of the pitch, you can save those opportunities. So you can see how the 3-2-1 theory in episode 2 links into this. If you are in position 3, then you want to be furthest back. If you're in position 2, you want to hold yourself on the opposite side of the pitch and start pushing back to that position 3 where needed. Now the light has just started shining on my desk, and I think that's a good place to finish. So if you enjoyed the episode, make sure to leave a like. If you've got any questions about this, be sure to comment. I can clear it up as much as I can, as these are very complex theories based around positioning, and hopefully you've learnt a little bit from the episode. So thank you for watching.